The protests at today's campus-wide commencement got loud, with speakers shouting over the chanting.
He also touted a proposal in the upcoming budget of more than $500 million in funding when it comes to school security.
In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is ordering state universities to ban a pro-Palestinian student group from protesting.
Protesters really warning them that any kind of encampments or disruption of graduations will not be happening here. It was
the violent scenes breaking out at campus protests across this country over the war in Gaza.
To know about issues about our families and about the massacres that they are subjected to.
Global pro-Palestine protests. The global pro-Palestine protests sweeping across college campuses represent a powerful display of solidarity with Palestinians suffering amid the Israel-Gaza conflict. Students, driven by a deep commitment to justice and human rights, are demanding that their universities take a principled stand by severing financial and academic ties with Israel, including divesting from Israeli-affiliated companies. These protests are not merely about expressing discontent. They are a passionate call for peace and an end to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Students recognize the urgent need for action to address the disproportionate violence and oppression faced by Palestinians at the hands of the Israeli government. By demanding divestment from companies complicit in Israel's occupation and violence, protesters are taking a stand against injustice and advocating for accountability. The establishment of encampments and demonstrations on campuses underscores the determination of students to amplify their voices and demand meaningful change. These spaces serve as hubs for dialogue, education, and activism, fostering solidarity among students and empowering them to challenge institutional complicity with Israeli oppression. The resonance of these protests extends far beyond the borders of the U.S., with similar movements taking shape in countries like the UK, Canada, and Australia. This global solidarity underscores the universality for the struggle for justice and the recognition of Palestinian rights as a fundamental issue of human dignity. The decision by Columbia University to cancel its main graduation ceremony due to ongoing protests speaks volumes about the magnitude of the movement. It reflects the power of student activism to disrupt the status quo and compel institutions to confront uncomfortable truths. Rather than silencing dissent, this action highlights the importance of listening to the voices of those advocating for change and acknowledging the urgency of addressing the plight of Palestinians. In essence, the global pro-Palestine protests on college campuses are a testament to the unwavering commitment of students to justice, peace, and human rights. They represent a collective effort to challenge complicity with oppression and to stand in solidarity with those suffering from violence and injustice. University responses. University responses to the pro-Palestine protests have varied, reflecting the complexities of the issues at hand and the diverse approaches taken by different institutions. From calling law enforcement to negotiating with demonstrators, universities have grappled with how best to address the demands of protesters while maintaining order on campus. Some universities have responded to protester demands by agreeing to divest from companies linked to Israel. This proactive approach acknowledges the concerns raised by students and demonstrates a commitment to aligning university investments with ethical principles. By divesting from companies complicit in human rights violations, these universities send a powerful message of solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Others have opted to promise consideration of the demands and disclose investment details. While not immediately committing to divestment, these universities show a willingness to engage with student concerns and explore potential avenues for addressing them. By promising transparency and accountability regarding investment decisions, these institutions lay the groundwork for future dialogue and action.
Pro-Palestinian protests are spreading at college campuses in the United States and around the globe.
To know about issues about our families and about the massacres that they are subjected to.
The protests at today's campus-wide commencement got loud, with speakers shouting over the chanting.
In cases where agreements have been reached between protesters and administrations, compromises have been made to address protester demands while also upholding institutional priorities. Setting up Palestine awareness centers and hiring faculty with expertise in Palestinian studies are examples of tangible steps taken to meet protester demands and foster greater understanding of the Palestinian plight within the university community. Encampments established by protesters have often been dismantled in exchange for commitments from universities, such as investment policy reviews and engagement with students on investment decisions. While the removal of encampments may be seen as a concession by protesters, it is often accompanied by concrete commitments from universities to address protester concerns in a meaningful way. Examples of such agreements at Northwestern University, Brown University, Evergreen State College, and others highlight the diversity of approaches taken by universities in response to protester demands. These agreements showcase the potential for constructive dialogue and compromise between students and administrations, ultimately leading to positive outcomes for all stakeholders involved. DeSantis' legislation. Governor DeSantis' recent legislation to place campus protesters advocating violence against Jews on the TSA no-fly list has been met with widespread criticism for its harsh and disproportionate approach. By proposing such measures, DeSantis overlooks the fundamental rights to free speech and peaceful protest, instead opting for punitive actions that stifle dissent and infringe upon civil liberties. This legislation not only undermines the democratic principles upon which our society is founded, but also perpetuates a climate of fear and repression. In emphasizing the need for maintaining order on university campuses, DeSantis fails to recognize the significance of these protests and the justness of their cause. Rather than engaging with the grievances of students and addressing the root causes of their discontent, he chooses to dismiss their concerns and resort to heavy-handed tactics to suppress dissent. This dismissive attitude reflects a lack of empathy and understanding of the issues at hand, further exacerbating tensions between the government and its citizens.
Protestors really warning them that any kind of encampments or disruption of graduations will not be happening here. It was
DeSantis touting funding that he says will make our schools safer. This comes amid the sound of protesters in the background.
We don't do that here in the state of Florida. And so they did have an encampment.
He also touted a proposal in the upcoming budget of more than $500 million in funding when it comes to school security.
Additionally, while pledging support for Jewish students and institutions, DeSantis overlooks the broader context of violence and discrimination faced by marginalized communities, including those of other faiths. By narrowly focusing on protecting Jewish students from harassment and discrimination, he fails to address the systemic injustices and inequalities perpetuated by Israeli policies in Gaza and beyond. This selective approach to combating discrimination undermines efforts to create a more inclusive and equitable society for all. Florida's education system. Governor DeSantis has proudly highlighted Florida's impressive achievements in higher education, celebrating the state's top ranking in affordability and quality, as reported by U.S. News and World Report. This recognition reflects Florida's commitment to providing accessible and high-quality education to its residents, setting a standard of excellence for other states to emulate. In line with this commitment, Governor DeSantis has announced significant budget allocations for new campus construction and infrastructure improvements. This investment underscores Florida's dedication to enhancing the learning environment for students and ensuring that educational facilities meet the needs of a growing student population. Amidst recent protests and heightened concerns about campus security, Governor DeSantis has placed a strong emphasis on campus security measures. Recognizing the importance of ensuring the safety of students and maintaining order on campus, Florida has taken proactive steps to address security challenges and prevent disruptions to the learning environment. In addition to enhancing physical security measures, Florida has positioned itself as a welcoming and supportive environment for students affected by harassment or discrimination. By offering support and resources to those seeking refuge from harassment or discrimination, Florida demonstrates its commitment to upholding the values of tolerance, inclusivity, and respect for all individuals within its educational institutions. International solidarity and support. Governor DeSantis has voiced concern over international protests targeting Jewish students and has reiterated Florida's commitment to providing a safe and inclusive environment for all students. Amidst escalating tensions and incidents of harassment targeting Jewish students, Florida remains steadfast in its resolve to uphold the principles of tolerance, diversity, and respect within its educational institutions. At the same time, protests at universities worldwide have brought attention to the plight of Palestinians in Gaza and have underscored global solidarity with the Palestinian cause. From the UK to Canada and the US, students have rallied together to demand justice for Palestinians and to call for an end to the Israeli occupation. In response to these protests, some universities have reached agreements with protesters, signaling a willingness to engage with student demands for divestment and policy changes. These agreements reflect efforts by universities to address the concerns raised by students and to foster dialogue and understanding on complex and contentious issues.
Commandeer property, when you try to set up encampments, you are not going to be allowed to do that in this state.
In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is ordering state universities to ban a pro-Palestinian student group from protesting.
Well, protests against the war in Gaza have been taking center stage at college campuses across the U.S.
The violent scenes breaking out at campus protests across this country over the war in Gaza.
Beyond protests, efforts to support Palestine have extended to initiatives aimed at raising awareness, promoting dialogue, and advocating for policy changes. From educational events to grassroots campaigns, individuals and organizations around the world are working to amplify the voices of Palestinians and to challenge the status quo of oppression and injustice in the region. In this global movement for solidarity and support, universities play a crucial role as hubs of knowledge, debate, and activism. By engaging with students, faculty, and communities, universities have the opportunity to contribute to meaningful change and to uphold the values of justice, equality, and human rights on a global scale. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.